Yes, indeed. The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
There is an old saying in my family. Thou who art undead art chosen. And thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know.
You'd have done better to rot in the undead asylum. But too late now.
Discipline over man comes in many forms. However, the more subtle manners of control tend to not only be the most effective, but the most terrifying. Discipline that requires no physical violence, subjugation, or action at all lasts forever over those who are affected. The Undead Asylum from Dark Souls 1 is not just a simple tutorial zone, but a representation of the greater control the world has on the cursed undead, all without overtly enacting that control. The Undead Asylum not only presents the game's basic mechanics in a neat package, but serves as a model of the oppression of the undead prophecy. The masterful execution of a basic starting zone is why Dark Souls 1 still matters. Hi everyone, and I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to the next installment of the Why Dark Souls 1 Still Matters series. Out of all the Souls games to this point in 2024, Dark Souls 1 still serves as the gold standard in combat, world design, and lore for these games in my view. Here, we will be taking a look at the greater significance of the opening zone, the Undead Asylum, and its influence on the greater narrative of Dark Souls 1 and the player experience. The Northern Undead Asylum was built in order to house those who were undead and branded with the dark sign. The prisoners of the asylum were locked away to await the end of the world. Here, many of the inhabitants have either died or gone hollow, save for us, the player character, who will eventually be known as the Chosen Undead. Legend and prophecy stated that eventually a chosen undead would escape and embark on a pilgrimage to Lordran, the land of the ancient gods and lords. However, escaping the asylum is no easy task for the undead. The asylum is guarded by a large demon that blocks escape. The chosen undead eventually beats the demon and is whisked away by a giant raven to begin their pilgrimage in Lordran to ring the bells of awakening and receive the message of their fate. The asylum serves as an ideal model of discipline and subjugation over a group of people. They are completely cut off from the rest of the world, left to rot, and given little hope of escape. Even if one manages to break the confines of their cell, the demon is an effective surveillance system hovering over the whole building, waiting for someone to enter the main hall. The structure and implementation of the Undead Asylum in-game closely models a real-world example of a prison model known as the Panopticon, developed by Jeremy Bentham. The system involves a cylindrical building with a center observation tower. The cells were visible on the sides facing and facing away from the observation tower, but the sides connected to the neighboring cells were walled off. The inhabitants of each cell could not see their neighbors and could only see the tower and the outside world. The prisoner never knew when they were being watched, leaving them with a constant thought of being under surveillance. The central observation tower was only occupied by one officer. This allowed only one person needed to function as the guard or warden of the facility instead of an entire staff of guards and observers. Bentham posed that this same model could be transferred to hospitals, schools, and asylums. This model exhibits total control and discipline over a large group of people with just one person. The Northern Undead Asylum has a similar goal and structure in mind. It attempts to exhibit total control and surveillance over the cursed undead. While the asylum as we find it in-game has certainly seen better days, its execution of control over the inhabitants is still effective. Much like the Panopticon model, the asylum demon functions similarly as the central control tower. Just like Bentham's model, the surveillance is controlled by a singular entity. There are technically no other guards in the asylum, Instead, we fight off prisoners who have escaped their cells but are too far gone in the hollowing process to have the urgency to escape. Perhaps they were beaten by the Asylum demon one too many times and gave up, or simply the passing of time has eroded their sanity. The singular demon controls the entire Asylum population, serving as surveillance by watching from above, punishment through attacking those that enter the main hall, and warden by holding the keys to escape. Even if the Asylum demon is beaten by the chosen undead, there is another demon tucked away to take its place to continue the function of the Asylum as normal, just like guards taking shifts in the observation tower in the Panopticon model. While the Undead Asylum functions similarly to the Panopticon in its structure, it also inflicts the same control through the minds of its inhabitants. The undead are fed a prophecy or legend that escape from the Asylum will bring them salvation. This prophecy is relayed to us through our interaction with Oscar of Astora, the knight who initially helps us escape the confines of our cell and gives us the Estus flask. While one might say that the imprisonment ends once we escape the Asylum, they are wrong. We are now prisoners to the prophecy of the chosen undead, and it's shared with us through either Frampt or Koth. Either primordial serpent's request ultimately subjugates the player and the chosen undead from the freedom of choice. Both serpents control the narrative and the outcomes surrounding their respective prophecies, much like the control exercised by the watchmen in the control tower of the Panopticon model. Both serpents are essentially always watching in the background. Once the player leaves the Undead Asylum and becomes the chosen undead, prophecy becomes the punishment, and the control essentially showing that the player has no control over the outcome from both a mechanical and lore perspective. Linking the fire or ushering in the dark are different sides of the same coin. As Michael Foucault stated in his essay in response to the Panopticon titled Panopticism, the perfection of power should tend to render its actual exercise unnecessary, that this architectural apparatus should be a machine for creating and sustaining a power relation independent of the person who exercises it. In short, that the inmates should be caught up in a power situation of which they are themselves the bearers. What Foucault is stating here is that the power is most effective when it is not needed to be shown in such an overt ways such as violence or total control. What we see throughout the Asylum and the prophecy of the undead is a control that is more subdued. Foucault also states here that power is extremely effective to those under surveillance who are under the illusion of control. Power is put in the position or possession of the prisoners. Here in Dark Souls 1, the same concept applies. The chosen undead believe they have control and responsibility to take up the mantle of the lords and change the fate of the world, and that their escape from the Asylum is just another step in the greater plan laid out for them. In the end, it all means nothing, no matter what they choose. Gwyn will get his next age in the end. He gets what he wants thanks to the prophecy he and his confidants devised in order to keep the world moving. What the Undead Asylum represents is the most condensed version of control and discipline exuded on the chosen undead by the greater forces and players in the background. The Undead Asylum offers hope of control and power to the prisoners under the guise of fate or prophecy in its structure. The greatest form of control is presenting hope while lying through one's teeth. What the Undead Asylum ultimately represents is the cruelty of Gwyn. If one escapes, then they are considered special or chosen. All of this grandeur and praise towards the player and the chosen undead is a lie. This is control and surveillance that would make Bentham blush. It's control that allows the imposed upon to feel in control when they are actually walking on a conveyor belt towards doing whatever those in power want them to do. We, as the chosen undead, have no control because we are always acting as a pawn for another without our knowledge, and it all started in our cell in the Asylum. Overall, no starting area in the Souls series currently models the linking of the fire and the oppression of the world in the same effective manner. We would have done better to rot there in the first place. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already done so. I make videos on the Souls series as well as other well-known titles in gaming now and then. Any additional insights in the comments is always greatly appreciated. I always enjoy seeing others' thoughts and views on the subjects of these games. If you have a topic or idea for any future videos, feel free to let me know as well. Thanks again, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take care.